Welcome to That Eight, a queer food podcast. I'm your host, Justin Burke. Imagine starting a blog before blogging was a thing, as a bored, newly out college student cooking to calm yourself, and somehow turning that blog into a career spanning Food Network, TV writing, 2 cookbooks, and now a debut novel, Food Person. That's Adam Roberts. On this episode, we dive into Adam's journey from his blog, The Amateur Gourmet, to his novel, The Food Person. We talk about building a creative life outside the algorithm, queerness that exists without needing to perform, and creating a life in food and writing that's both playful, honest, and entirely his own. I'm really glad you're here. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today on That Eight. I think to kind of kick it off, let's just do a quick introduction of who you are, what you've done,
Jeez.
And where you are right now.
This sounds like a question for my
Yeah.
therapist.
No pressure.
Who I am.
Yeah, we do therapy here
Okay.
too.
Well, I am a food writer. I've been doing this for 20 years. So I started my
Okay.
food blog, The Amateur Gourmet, back in 2004. I was a miserable law school student, and somewhat relevant to your topic, I was also recently out of the closet. So I come out to my family, and it hadn't gone very well. So I had started cooking as sort of this
Okay.
hobby, and it was a strange thing because I came from a family where nobody cooked. So it was sort of this like little adventure I went on for myself. I was also like a form of self-nourishment of just sort of like feeding myself and learning how to do that. And so I started the blog in 2004 as a way to sort of document that. And meanwhile, I'd gone to grad school for playwriting after that. And I thought I was going to be a writer in that regard. And then the food blog took off. So when the food blog took off, it was just like, oh, I guess this is my career now. And then for the past 20 years, I've been writing cookbooks and books of essays. And I just wrote a novel that came out called Food Person. So I guess I stumbled into food writing, and here I am all these years later.
That's amazing, and I feel like I also stumbled upon it.
Yeah.
It's funny now that I am a published cookbook author. My
Mhm.
mom, she's like, "Really, you're a published author because you epically failed English growing up."
That's
It's
hilarious.
terrible.
Yeah, the last laugh. Yeah, I feel like it's always the ones that like have the most to prove in something that end up doing the thing that
Yeah.
others who don't have as much to prove end
Yeah,
up
no,
not
I
doing, if that
completely
makes any
agree.
sense. Yeah.
So I would categorize you as one of the OG food bloggers. Like I remember like I hadn't graduated college yet. I was about to. I was interested in food and your blog. Somehow I stumbled upon your blog and I was like, what's a food blog? And then, I was also like, what's a blog? So can we talk a little bit? I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but did you even know what blogging meant, or was it did someone plant that seed in your mind, or need a creative outlet? Like, how did it really start?
It actually started because I discovered these forums. So this was pre-food blogging. I
Yeah,
discovered these
forums.
forums. One was Eagle It and one was Chowhound. And I would write
Mhm.
on there as, at AD Rober was like my first name and my last name like matched up. It was my like college email prefix. And so I would write on those forums. And then like I had this one crazy experience where I went to Charlie Trotter's in Chicago, which was a really formal, fancy restaurant,
Mhm.
famous because like it was like he was so particular. And I went with my friend Alex. And we were college kids, like we were like in our 20s, and we were just so not the right audience for this place. So I went on Eagle It and I wrote this like scathing review, but sort of bratty, like, who was I? But I called it
Right.
Charlie Trotter's Super Dud, like Jesus Christ Superstar. And I wrote this like scathing review, but it was kind of funny and irreverent and crazy. And all these people on Eagle It were furious. They had like smoke coming out of their ears, and they were like, who do you think you are? How dare you criticize Charlie Trotters? You're just an idiot kid. You don't know anything. And one of the users on the forum was Bourdain. Like his name was
Oh,
Bourdain, and it was Anthony Bourdain. And
oh,
he defended
oh.
me, and he was like,
Okay.
we need to listen to voices like these. They're important. Add Rober threw a cat into the temple, and we need more cats in the temple. So when that happened, it was like I couldn't believe my eyes, because Anthony Bourdain was like this huge, like famous food writer. I don't know if he had his TV show yet. And so my friends were like, "That's amazing." They were like, "You should start a food blog." And that's when I was like, "What's a food blog?" Or what's a they actually just said start a blog.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started the blog. That was a long-winded way of saying that I kind of like took a discursive path towards food blogging, and then I sort of wound up there.
When it started, I mean, it's been a while. I can't remember because I'm old, but
You don't seem that old. You're younger than me if you were reading my food blog in college.
yeah, I'm almost 42.
Okay,
So
I'm
elder
46. See,
millennial.
I could be your father.
But what so when it started, were you doing recipes, or was it just strictly reviewing restaurants and just talking about food, blogging about food?
At the very beginning, I was just wacky. Like I would just write anything and everything. Like I had a post where like I tried cat food to see what it tasted like. I had a post where like I would write songs about food. I wrote like
Mhm.
I had like a Thursday night dinner song where like
Uh,
every Thursday night I would write a song about what I ate.
yeah.
So it was just sort of like wild. Like it wasn't no, it wasn't just recipe. And if I did a recipe back at the beginning, it would usually be a disaster. Like I had a post like the day that my pound cake threw up, which was when like I did a dinner party where I made a pound cake and then like everyone was sitting around the table and I cut into it and like
Mhm.
it oozed out batter
Oh,
all
no.
over the
Oh, no.
table. And I was like, so instead of just being, so I mean, I was so sad is like, 'cause I just revived my food blog. And now, of course, I'm thinking about SEO and like, oh, I better do
Yeah.
like the ultimate apple pie recipe. But back then it was just like, the apple, it would just be like whatever I wanted to write. And I would never, ever think about, will this be Googleable? Will this be searchable? Will this be,
Yeah.
and I think that's what made it so fun.
And now they talk about AIO. Like, is it
Oh, yeah.
being scanned by ChatGPT and all that? It's crazy. It's crazy the things that you have to think. But so Amateur Gourmet has evolved. We were just talking about those early years, and we know you've written two cookbooks, and right, it was two cookbooks, or was it more than two?
I
I
wrote
feel like
2 cookbooks, a book of
okay,
essays, and then a novel.
yeah, and
Yeah,
then the
I had
novel.
a I
So
wasn't sure myself.
a lot of opportunities. But what other opportunities have like emerged since Amateur Gourmet that you didn't anticipate?
Well, I mean, the craziest one is that I wrote an essay for the It Gets Better project when that was happening, like, when Dan Savage did that whole thing, like, It Gets
Yeah,
Better.
yeah,
And, I wrote one about introducing my parents to Craig's parents for the first time. Craig is my husband,
hmm,
and cooking a meal, and he loved it, and he put it in his book. And at the same time, like, I'd had a background in playwriting and TV writing. So when I moved to LA, I got an agent, and I had found out that Dan Savage had a TV show that was gonna be on ABC called The
yeah,
Real O'Neills,
yeah.
and it was able to get a meeting on that show because I was in the It Gets Better project because I wrote that essay on my food blog, and then I got hired on the show and I became a TV writer. So that was
That's
probably the most insane sequence of events. But there were so many others. I mean, I got hired early on in my early days of food blogging. By the Food Network. And so like they wanted me to be they liked me quote unquote because I was adorkable and they wanted me to be like an awkward, like nerdy food blogger, which wasn't a stretch for me. And they
yeah.
plopped me in day one. And day one, I showed up and they're like, okay, you're going to be interviewing Rachel Ray, Bobby Flay, and Alton Brown. And I was like, what? And it was
Happy
just
first
like,
day.
boom. Yeah,
This sounds very on par with Food
yeah,
Network. Also, just our industry. Like there is no like easing into it. It's just literally you can wake up and you're just plopped in front of
yes,
hundreds of thousands of people, and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I guess I'm gonna try this out.
I know.
Yeah. All right. So I kind of it's a big question that almost every queer food professional gets asked is like, what is queer food? But I want to ask it in a different way with you, because of Amateur Gourmet and the novel Food Person. For you, how does queerness show up in your food writing, your recipe development? Like, how do you see it in your food world?
It's a strange question for me because it's, like, so seamless in a way, like,
Hmm.
it's just, like, I go to Provincetown every summer with my friends, and I take pictures, and I
Yeah.
write about it, and I put it on Instagram, and I don't consciously think, like, this is queer food content, like,
Right.
my gay friend's eating a lobster roll, but, it's like but I guess for the people who follow me, who don't have gay friends, who don't have gay family members or queer family members, it's a way of sort of showing
Yeah.
people that, like, I'm just living my life like you're living your life, and I'm making soup like you're making soup. And I guess if I have a role in all that, it's normalizing
Hmm.
the queer lifestyle and just sort of
Yeah.
making it a universal experience. It was so funny. I mean, to talk about like how times have changed, I started my blog, as I mentioned, in 2004, and I
Mhm.
wasn't out on the blog. And
Oh,
I
okay.
would just write about all kinds of stuff, and I never said anything, but I was like singing show tunes about like matzo ball soup. So like it was like
Yeah.
pretty clear like I was gay. And then I'll never forget when I started dating my husband Craig, which is almost 20 years ago. I went out for soup dumplings with him, and I did
Mhm.
a post called Mouth Scars and Soup Dumplings, a trip to somewhere in Chinatown. And then in the post, I just wrote, I buried it. It was like 8 paragraphs down. I
Yeah.
was like, and now the guy I'm dating, Craig, took me to soup dumpling, or I just mentioned that, and Craig is the guy I'm dating, and he's shared soup dumplings with me. You would not believe the comments I got on that post. It was like
Oh, I can yeah.
comment after comment after like I knew you were gay. I knew you liked kissing boys. I knew, and I was like, oh my God, like talk about like people like wanting me to be out. And it was just like as
Yeah.
soon as that happened, it was just like off to the races. And I ever since then I've written all about Craig, and I mean culminating in our wedding, which I did a huge post about. And so
Yeah.
I just feel like it's not something I consciously think about, but I also, having been, I guess, somewhat closeted on my blog at the very beginning, it's liberating to be able to just write about food and my life and my friends and my husband and my dog and not
Yeah.
have to worry about any of it.
I think what is so important too for queer food professionals, especially the ones who are doing food writing, recipe development, is I mean, mainstream media really likes to like focus on one aspect of our lives.
Mhm.
It's like we go to restaurants and bars, we have nightlife and performance, drag shows, and that's like all very massive pillars in our lives, but there is also our everyday, our lived in
Mhm.
experiences, our home life. And I even today, I find that it's a challenge for media sometimes to accurately talk about it because they just don't know. And also, I mean, just in the environment that we are, where everyone's like businesses, media, even individuals, we're all tiptoeing because of the political environment we're in. Like it's like a witch hunt. It's literally a witch hunt. And so I do agree with you. Being able to talk about it naturally within your writing it's so much, it's a lot more powerful in my
Mhm.
opinion because it's authentic, it's not forced, and you're just showing like woke up today still gay. Like I'm gonna
Yeah, exactly.
like walk the dogs and go make breakfast for my husband, and it's just those little touches are probably the more powerful moments of our profession when we talk about it. On the personal like part of food with queerness, how have there been any like rituals or traditions or moments where food is very integral in your life, where you've reclaimed it or rewritten it through a queer lens? An example for me, it was very confusing to my family that I never wanted to go out with my grandfather to go hunting. I was just like, no, I will
Mhm.
not shoot animals for fun. I wanted to be in the kitchen and I wanted to learn how to cook and bake. And it was a lot of tension within my family because of that. And, even like religion, there were certain things that, male presenting individuals did not do in the kitchen. And I'm just curious, have you seen that happen in your personal life or any moments around your community?
I mean, easy answer. I begged my parents growing up for an easy bake oven. That's all I wanted for Hanukkah, and they didn't get it for me. And it's so funny because my parents' dream for me was to become a doctor or a lawyer. And I think that if they had just gotten me that easy bake oven, I would probably have become a doctor and they would have had their dreams come true. But because they denied me that, now I'm a professional food writer. So yeah, I feel like I have embraced the fact that, because it's similar in my culture too, in the Jewish culture I come from, the
Mhm.
men are the breadwinners, and I mean the women where I come from don't cook either. I mean they all, but they plan the restaurant meals and they
Yeah.
plan like where we're gonna go. But for me to be in the kitchen cooking is definitely perceived as kind of a female thing and not something a
Mhm.
guy does. So I think that I've pushed against that. And then in terms of rituals, it's funny because it's like yes, like I had to rebel against the traditional heterosexual culture I came from, but also within the gay culture that I'm a part of, I do feel like cooking rich meals and desserts and stuff is also a rebellion in a way.
Mhm.
And like a lot of my friends, when I lived in LA for 12 years, it was like sort of an anomaly to like be baking with butter and
Yeah.
serving, bacon and, like a
Yeah.
pork or something. It's like people would come over for dinner and be like, wait, where's the protein shake?
Yeah.
And
Where's
so
my
I feel like
avocado toast?
Yeah. So I feel like as much as a maverick in the gay world in a way by being a cook, and a food
Mhm.
writer as I do in the straight world, like I do feel like there's it sort of feels like I'm a bit of an outsider sometimes in both cultures.
It's so funny that you said that about California because I've completely forgotten about this, but now I just remembered. So when I was like first started in food, I was doing pop-ups and it was like gourmet Pop-Tarts and donuts. And we took it on a national tour and I was like, we're gonna go to California. We're gonna go to my hometown. We're gonna go to LA County. And this was early 2000s. And so could not find collaborators.
Mm.
Like people were like, Californians don't really eat that stuff. And I was like, no, no, you do. No, you do. You just
Yeah, yeah.
don't want to publicly say you do.
Right, exactly.
But now I'm like, look at all these amazing bakeries that are
Yeah.
in California. And I'm like, I told you.
Hey,
Like
it's true. I
I
think
was like, I told you. It's just like you just finally came out saying you do eat sugar and baked goods. But yeah,
are you
it's
from
funny that you
LA
said that.
originally?
So I grew up in Barstow, California.
Oh,
So you have to go through it to go to from LA to Vegas and vice versa. But when I graduated high school, I then moved to Orange County, but found myself predominantly in the LA area most of the time. So very
got
familiar
it.
with it. People are shocked sometimes that I'm from there because I lived in Boston for so long. And I definitely adopted that way of life. And I do consider Boston more of my home than California.
Okay.
But yeah, I love California. I like going back, but for a short amount of time. Like when I was on the book tour, I went back and I was like, "All right, this is it. That was a great 3 days. We got time to go."
That's how I feel too, and it's funny because I lived there for 12 years, but I love my friends there, and I was so happy to see them on my book tour, but
Yeah.
beyond that, I was very happy to come back to New York. And you live in South Carolina right now, right?
Yeah, so now I live in Columbia, South Carolina.
I've been
So
there.
you've been to Columbia?
Yeah, I actually another thing that came from my food blog is that I would get these, like, opportunities, and one of them was the South Carolina Tourism Board
Yeah.
brought me to South Carolina and had me do, like, a road trip, and I went from, Charleston to Columbia to Greenville, and I stopped in each place and had food and all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, I've been there, it's great. I loved South Carolina, I had a good time there.
Yeah, South Carolina, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful state. The food way is amazing. Before we start talking about food person, just one more question about Amateur Gourmet is what lessons did you learn and continue to learn with Amateur Gourmet as it evolves in food writing, that you've taken with you to, like, writing a novel and just all the other opportunities that have come up from it?
Well, I think that it's the same rule in food writing as it is in fiction writing, as it is in playwriting, as it is in poetry or any form of writing, where it's the more vulnerable you are, the more emotional you're willing to be, the more likely you are to connect with an audience. And
Yeah.
as much as like my food blog probably became popular because of like my roasted broccoli recipe that I stole from Ina Garten or like whatever my most popular posts were. I do think the people who stuck with me over the years stuck with me because of posts like my It Gets Better posts
Mhm.
and my wedding posts. And, even more recently, like I've had some health stuff. So I've been writing about that. And
Yeah.
I think just the more vulnerable that you can make yourself, the more people will respond to you and feel like they know you and want to connect with you. And so in the novel, it's like as much as it's a stand-in for me, my
Mhm.
main character, it's like there's a lot of emotion packed in there, hopefully, and people can feel emotionally connected to it. So that's my big takeaway is like don't hide from the emotional aspects of what you're
Yeah.
doing and see if there's a way to weave them in. And especially with food writing, it's like when I think of my favorite cookbooks, they're not the ones that have the best recipes. They're the ones that have the most life to them that
Yeah.
feel like I'm entering someone else's world. And so, yeah, I can go on and on.
Yeah, no, I completely understand and agree with that. Those early years, I think
Mhm.
I was approaching it from such a, artificial perspective and being like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I am a chef. We have to be the best. And it was very like performative in a sense.
Mhm.
And then when I finally let my guard down and stopped listening to horrible advice of like, don't talk about being gay in the industry. Certainly don't talk about your husband or the aspirations of having a child because it's going to hurt you more because you're also a pastry chef and that fits into the stereotype of you're
Hmm.
you're queer and you're a pastry chef. And so, but when I stopped and I did start talking about it, that's when I found that my writing started to get a lot better. And vulnerability. It's being vulnerable, but also knowing how to take care of yourself too. Like once you put that out there, know how to safeguard yourself, keep yourself
Mhm.
taken care of. And the responsibility that comes with being vulnerable because then people then look to you and they're like, there's someone that's like me. It's a visibility and representation. So being prepared for that. But yeah. So let's talk about your novel Food Person. And before we get into it, for those who haven't read it, can you give a snapshot of what the novel's about?
Sure. It's about an aspiring food writer in her 20s who gets fired from her job at a Food 52, like food magazine, or a digital
Hmm.
food magazine, and is forced to take a job ghostwriting a cookbook for a hot mess of a celebrity who's fallen on hard times in her career and wants to resuscitate her image by writing a cookbook, even though she knows nothing about food. So, sort of about like a opposites attract, unlikely friendship, Devil Wears Prada in the food world.
It is so good. I read the entire thing on the train from LA to San Francisco. Like
Wow. Okay.
read that
Great.
and like I'm the kind of reader, sometimes I'm a slow reader because I can't retain the information. Like I have to reread it for me to remember it and to make sense when I get to the next chapter or next part of the book. And it just clicked probably because it was so closely related to my real world, the
Mhm.
topic, but like the writing, the stories, the characters, I sometimes like to be like, "Ooh, I'm gonna anticipate what's happening next," and I was like, "Wow, you fooled me." Like,
Good. That's what
um,
I was trying to do.
I also could, like, picture I was like, "This should be a movie or a show." Like, I can picture, like, the actors that could play these parts, and so, like, you did such a good job of just illustrating it.
Thank you very much. I
Yeah,
appreciate
no.
it.
So everyone please read it because it is so, so good. But a question for you as like a fellow food writer, like and we just talked about it, like you wrote for television, you're in LA. So how did you prepare? Like how did you prepare for this? You've published cookbooks and the essays, but what was it like when you're like, oh, going to write a novel and I'm going to publish a novel?
Well, the truth is that over the past 20 years, from the moment I started my food blog, I was always working in the background on creative projects that
Hmm.
never saw the light of day. I mean, I would write plays, I would write musicals, I would write essay.
Yeah.
I mean, just all kinds of things. Like book, I had like a book of essays about food and religion that we didn't sell. I had a cookbook proposal about cooking your feelings, like what to cook when you're happy, what to cook when you're sad. That didn't
I
sell.
love that. What? I would
Yeah,
have
thank
bought
you.
that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah. And also like novel wise, like was I tried to write a novel about where I was from in Florida, Boca Raton. I tried to write a novel about a family of food critics. So like I'd been always working on this kind of stuff, and I think a lot, and some of it was more successful than others. You know, I wrote a
Hmm.
pilot. That got picked up by a producer in LA, and we shopped that around. And I had a screenplay that was optioned by Netflix, so I had like enough like experience, but it just
Hmm.
was a very I was basically was learning every step of the way. So, you know, it wasn't like one day I woke up with a light bulb over my head, like, I'm
Yeah.
going to write a novel. It was like, oh, I was always trying to do this. The key moment for me was allowing myself to write just a fun, poppy novel. I think
Hmm.
all along the way, I was always trying to write something that would be a little more serious or maybe more, you know, formally experimental or, you know, a lot of my favorite
Yeah.
writers are kind of bold and, you know, breaking out new forms. But I think I had to let go of that a little bit and be like, I'm just going to tell a fun story in my voice, and I'm going to write about an experience I had, which is the other part of this, which is that I ghost wrote a celebrity's cookbook, but I can't tell you who it was because I signed an NDA. But I had that experience, and my experience was incredibly positive and a wonderful experience. But
Hmm.
it was like, oh, what if it hadn't been? And what if the celebrity was a hot mess?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a funny premise for a book? So all those things kind of came together, and then I just started writing.
When I read Food Person, all of this is like real. It can happen. It does happen. Like, I know people. I've heard stories, and it was just it. Yes, it's fiction, but it also read like nonfiction. I was like,
Oh,
wow, this
good.
is an accurate portrayal of what it's like and what it can be. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet. Yeah.
I loved it. You just mentioned it. Similarities, like you ghost wrote, but like the idea, did you know the base foundation of it? Like, where did that come from? Like, how it was going to go from beginning to end and in the middle?
I mean, I had a background because I wrote for TV. I wrote for
Hmm.
2 seasons of The Real O'Neills, and I wrote 3 episodes. So, like, I'd had enough experience it's called, like, breaking story when you're in a writer's
Hmm.
room, that I understood the process. And so I bought a marker board, which is what you have in a writer's room. And I had
Mhm.
the marker board on a table, and I had my dry erase markers, and I wrote act one, act two, act three. So I kind of broke the story into a traditional screenplay structure, which is why you
Okay.
probably felt like it would make a good movie or TV show, because that's how I thought of it.
Yeah.
And then I started writing down events that, like, I knew the premise was that I was like a frumpy, shy food writer, and then like an
Mhm.
over the top, hot mess of a celebrity. So I was like, what could happen? Like, what are some things that could happen in this story? And actually, I don't want to spoil it, but like the climactic event at the end of sort of like three-quarters of the way through the book was the very first thing I came up with. I was like, oh,
Okay.
that could happen. And then I kind of filled in the whole grid with like, okay, this could happen, this could happen. And then I started putting that on paper or typing it up. And then I started, you did the outline, and then I kind of broke the outline, and then I wrote a first draft, and then I redid that. So, it's a whole process of developing the story. And once the story was in place and I knew, okay, this happens, this happens, then it
Mhm.
was easier to then fine tune it. So, I think finding the story is the hardest part of the process.
Yeah,
But once
I
you
bet.
find the story, yeah, once you find the story and you know the beats, then it's just about making it as strong as you can.
What were some of the surprises that kinda came out writing it, or even surprises that you're like, "I can't believe that I'm actually putting this in the book." Like, we're including that. Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest surprise for me was that for the story to really work, I had to understand the celebrity's character. Her name's
Mhm.
Molly in the book. And like in the first draft, she was basically the villain. It was very Devil Wears Prada. She was the Miranda Priestley.
Yeah.
And Isabella, my main character, was just always up against her, always up against her, always up against her. And then it ended, but it didn't work. Like I was like, this doesn't work. We need to understand Molly's point of view about food and like why is she like this? Because I think the shallow version or the first draft version was, well, she's a celebrity, she doesn't eat because she's vain about her body.
Mhm.
And I think in the revision and in the process, it was like, well, no, no, no. There's always more to the story. And I think, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen to this. But
Yeah, cover your ears.
was the realization that Molly's mother was a cook,
Mhm.
and that moment where Isabella and Molly go back to Molly's childhood home and find a book of her mother's recipes was a surprise to me as much as it would be to the reader. This is the story, like that her mother not only was a cook, she was a great cook, and Isabella reminds Molly of her mother, and then it just
Yeah.
opened up the story so much, and it was like about then it became more about Isabella trying to force Molly to revisit her past and own up to her relationship with her mother. And so those were all revelations that came later in the process.
I just find that so fascinating and so exciting too. Like, the creative process of that in writing and the surprises that these characters that you have created, then, like,
Hmm.
you're like, "Ah, what a surprise to me too. I created you, but you're surprising me." That is a part of the creative aspect that I haven't experienced yet.
I bet you have that with cooking. I mean, don't you feel like when you develop a recipe, you're like, what if I try, if I try like vanilla here instead of chocolate, or I use
Okay.
pistachios instead of
Yeah,
raspberries,
okay.
or yeah, I
If I
mean, I
look
feel like you must
if
surprise
I look at
yourself
it
all the
that
time.
way, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
If I look at it that way, yeah, okay.
yeah. No, but
Disregard what I
it's
just
just as
said.
well, I mean, it's just as important, it's like you're kind of experimenting and you're finding something that is gonna
Mhm.
give people pleasure in a way that they haven't experienced before, which I think is the whole point of
Yeah,
writing a good story is like you're trying to take people on a ride and give them an experience that they've never had before. So
yeah.
I think it's all very similar.
Another part of food person I love, and I don't know if I don't know if I expected, like, the main character to be, like, gay, queer, um, because you're a gay author, and, like, maybe that was just, like, irresponsible of me to assume, but when I read it, and then we meet Owen, who right, it's Owen who is the
Yeah,
okay,
gay
I don't
sidekick, yeah.
yeah, he's, like, the gay character, and I'm reading this, and I'm wondering, did you feel any internal or external pressure of including a queer character, of getting it right or giving it a new point of view that isn't necessarily always available in fiction?
It's funny because when I hope it's not I'm not revealing too much to say that you sent me some of these questions ahead of time. uh, but I didn't study them or like but I did scan them, and then when you have the one about Owen, and I read it to my husband, and he cackled because he was like, "You better tell him that I was the one who made you rewrite Owen." Because my first draft of Owen, he was really a bitchy gay cliche in the very
Okay.
first draft, and Craig, when he read it, was like, "I hated Owen." Like, he's like, "I hated him. I thought he was so unlikable." So in the next draft, like, I spent a lot of I guess that's the common thread here is that
Yeah.
in the first draft, it's like you do broad strokes on your
Mhm.
characters, and then in the second draft, you start to, unpack or sort of look deeper in them. So with
Yeah.
Owen, like I was like, okay, what's really going on here?
Mm.
And I felt like he's an agent in the book, or he wants to be an agent. His dad
Mhm.
runs one of the most powerful agencies in New York, and he wants his dad's approval. And I think that really helped me understand his character more and why he behaves the way he behaves, because he's trying to enter a world that is not very welcoming to him,
Yeah.
and he's trying to prove himself. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
I fell in love with Owen,
oh, good. I'll tell
like
Craig that.
please do, Greg. Thank you. I know I fell in love with Owen because when I was reading it, I kept going into reflecting on where I've seen versions of Owen before in novels, movies, TV series. And to me, it was like, okay, like there's a little bit of sarcasm. I mean, yes, there's sarcasm from Owen. There's behaviors that you're like, wow, that is really rude and inappropriate. And I feel like because you're gay, you think you can get away with that behavior. But the way you wrote him and the information you gave us about Owen, it explains why certain behaviors are happening for Owen. And that for me was the first time that I saw someone represented in our community where the backstory of why we put up these walls and these guardrails for us to keep us safe, like this is why it's happening. And so, I mean, maybe I'm advocating for Owen to have his own
Oh,
book.
yeah, wow. I'm glad you liked him so much. Yeah, I mean, he was funny because I definitely felt like I was writing a type, but at the same time, I think if you're trying to do good writing, it's like you have to have empathy for all your characters,
Hmm.
and you have to figure out what is really going on there. And so I think for Owen, it was going one level deeper with like who is this person and why is he the way he is? Because I've known a lot of Owens, maybe you do too, and they're difficult people, but there's something going on more than just than what meets the eye.
I also think too, reading it, not to give spoilers or anything, but Owen kind of comes into moments of Isabella's conflict or moments where the pushback that they have between each other, or Owen does something that resets Isabella. She does some self checking. So, like, it is a very important character for
Mhm.
the main characters. Like, yeah, I could talk about Owen a lot. But
Okay,
another
thank you,
thing,
thank you.
maybe I have a crush on Owen. I don't know.
Okay, well, if there's a movie, I'll invite you to the set and you can hang
Okay.
out with the actor playing
Okay, I
Owen.
will I will approve of who plays Owen.
Okay, got it.
No, so the other thing about the relationship of Isabella and Owen that I connected with quickly were these moments where food was at the center of their relationship, especially with Owen. It's a beautiful, subtle expression of queer food where Isabella cooks for him and they're sharing these intimate conversations, sometimes joyful, sometimes not so joyful over meals. And it's this, I would consider it like a quiet anchor between the two of them in their relationship. Was that intentional, or do you think that that was just something that happened, but then it just evolved into almost as a third character for their relationship?
Well, I feel like food for me is a metaphor throughout the book in the various relationships between the
Hmm.
characters. It's like especially like Isabella and her mother. Her mother kind of serves her really disgusting food throughout the story.
Yeah.
And so with Owen, I was actually trying to capture a little bit like, I had a best friend and roommate, a female roommate that I would cook for all the time. When I lived when I
Yeah.
first moved to my own apartment in New York. So there's something very intimate when you're in your 20s and you're sharing a space with somebody and you're sharing food with somebody. And I think that with Owen, he has somewhat of like some food issues. It's like he's also concerned about his looks.
Hmm.
And I think that's part of the evolution of their relationship is that when she first met him, he was sort of an outsider and kind of a freak in school. And then he
Yeah.
kind of started working out and taking care of himself in that way. And so the food thing has sort of drawn a wedge between them in a way too. It's sort of like whereas they used to connect over that, they don't as much anymore. So I guess I just wanted food to help reveal character. And I feel like in the Owens situation. It's more about how their friendship has sort of devolved in a way because they don't share food as much as they once did,
Yeah.
even though it's still something that can bring them together.
Yeah, and I think that's if we take it from, like, outside the book and in our lived experiences, you're right, like, food can reveal a lot about us, about the communities we belong to. I know I've certainly learned so much more about queer history because of food, because I've that's where I've found our the most accurate information to be centered around food for queer history, speaking to people and understanding, like, the relevance of these cookies, having
Hmm.
been baked hundreds of thousands of times to nourish people at AIDS clinics. And
Hmm.
so it's very powerful. I think what you did was not exhaust the message of the power of food. You put it there. You didn't let it go away. Sometimes it was front center, sometimes it's in the back, but it's always reminding you like the power of food and how it can really, if allowed, can really help people grow and evolve and establish communities and relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Just
good way of putting it. I like that.
I'll be your hype girl for food
Okay,
person.
yeah, yeah. Well, we should do a collab, like potluck food person meal or
Yeah.
something.
Oh, that would be fun. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay.
So just two more questions for you. We talked I think you mentioned a little bit about it earlier on in our conversation, but the terminology, the way you wrote the rhythm of when they're in the restaurants as well as at the bar, you described it so well. I was like, yeah, like that's exactly how it happens. Like that's exactly how that interaction between a guest and someone in the restaurant would communicate in exchange and conversation and the lingo, the rhythm of conversations in food media. Like it was just so accurate. And we talked a little bit about Isabella's a little bit of a reflection of your own experience, but I'm wondering what other experiences did and emotional truths did you pull from your own life to like bring into the book?
That was actually that was like a curveball because I thought they were gonna
I
ask about,
know.
like, the restaurant industry, and I was like, "Oh, I'm getting all ready for that." I
Twist.
mean, it's so funny when I finished writing this book and Craig read it, I said to him, I was like, "Aren't you proud of me?" I was like, "Look at what I did. Like, I created this character, Isabella, out of whole cloth. Like, she didn't exist before, and now she exists. Like, don't you think that's amazing?" And he's like, "Adam, you wrote yourself." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I did." And so to answer that question, it's like everything. I mean, a great example is her, at the beginning of the book, she does a food demo. She's forced
Mhm.
to demonstrate how to make a
Oh
chocolate
yeah.
souffle
That made
on
me sweat
camera.
all when I read that, I was sweating. I was like, I am so anxious for her.
Right, because she did not wanna be on camera, but she has to do it for her job, and when I got hired by the Food Network, I told you that they plopped me in day 1 with Rachel Ray and Bobby
Yeah.
Flay, but actually the truth is the first thing they had me do was they had me do, like, a different version of the show. They said they wanted it to be like The Daily Show for the Food Network, which whatever that means, I don't even know what
Okay.
that means. And so they had a whole script. I wrote a script and so they brought me to a soundstage and it was a full crew, like lights, cameras, like everything, like producers standing there.
Yeah.
And it was just me on a set. And I had to give this opening monologue, like the Jon Stewart of the Food Network, which made no sense. And I absolutely, completely froze. Like
Oh
I
my gosh.
froze. I just was like, I do not remember what I was supposed to say. And then
Yeah.
like the producer had to pull me aside and be like, come on, Adam, like you can do this, and then I kind of went through it, but it was exactly that exact same moment. I mean, so there's got to be so many things in the book that I'm not even thinking about that I pulled
Yeah.
from, but I guess I think ultimately Isabella is an introverted character and Molly is an extroverted character, and
Mhm.
Isabella is selfless in a lot of ways, like she's not obsessed with herself, and Molly is selfish and is totally obsessed with herself.
Mhm.
And so I think what I was writing about in a weird way is like the push and pull of those two instincts in trying to forge a creative career because
Yeah.
Isabella ultimately her goal is to be a food writer and she wants to be a published writer, and it's like you can't be a complete nobody and you can't be so self avoiding,
Mhm.
I guess, just like not interesting yourself that nobody will want to pay attention to you. You have to figure out a way to put yourself out there and
Yeah.
to exert yourself, but it's like how do you do that if that's not in your instincts?
Mhm.
And for Molly, it's the opposite. It's like, how do you become a good person and connect with people if you're only obsessed with yourself? So, I think living in LA for 12 years definitely colored this story too, because I
Yeah.
met a lot of people who I loved who are just completely obsessed with their careers
Mhm.
and themselves and their image and how they looked. And it's like, I saw that and I was kind of put off by that aspect of it. But at the same time, a lot of them became successful. And it's like, well, you know what? Like it took that for them to be successful. So I think there
Yeah.
was a lot of me wrestling with those ideas and wrestling with selfishness versus selflessness and how it manifests itself in your career.
Yeah, I definitely picked up on that too, and I think anyone in the creative space, specifically in the food creative space, like, this is a good read. There are lessons learned. I'm an introvert and an extrovert. Like, once my social meter is hit, I'm like, "Gotta go." Like, I am done.
Yeah,
I need
me
I
too.
need I need me time.
Yeah.
And I don't want my work to always be about me.
Hmm.
And that is hard because I am the one creating the work. So, of course, the interest will be about me. And so, this book really did, like you just said, there are lessons of finding that balance of having both and finding the ways that both of those need to work together if
Hmm.
this is the career that you want. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable is my motto
Yeah,
in this field.
totally.
So, and I especially think too, like, for the queer and trans community, if you're going into this industry, or if you are in this industry of food writing or working in restaurants or you know photographer, stylist, like, you have to expose yourself, and
Hmm.
there might be parts of you that you're not ready to expose because you are still personally figuring it out. And I think that this not necessarily like was the message of, like, say, Owen or even the other characters, but there's a commonality of doing the work behind the
Hmm.
scenes while at the same time doing the job that is very public facing. And I think if we see more for the young creatives, the young queer trans creatives who see more people like you writing these stories, Amateur Gourmet, whatever wonderful things you do after this, which I'm sure I can't wait.
Thank you.
It's really important for them to see individuals who are showing options of how to walk life and be happy and fulfilled, you know?
Oh, that's very sweet. Well, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. I could be like living like, I could be like have like a torture chamber in my house and be like,
Well, yeah, I mean, you could.
yeah, no, 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 but that's very sweet. And yeah, I'm working on the next novel. So when I
Okay.
finish that, we'll have to send it your way.
Yes, that's awesome. Thank you. So, yeah, your career fluidity in food has been amazing. Like, it's been really encouraging to see those early days of blogging of, like, what the hell is this, and just keep at it and going at it and letting that journey just ride for you has been for me a north star essentially. Like, I would go back and check, and I'm not like I think we don't understand, especially when blogging started and when social media started, those who jumped on it early, it was very messy and confusing. And the ones that have survived decades later, like, it just creates a roadmap for future creatives and future people that want to go into food specifically, how to navigate it. So just thank you for doing that, for not only
Oh,
for me, but also just for the community of putting yourself out there and allowing
thank
that
you.
exposure and vulnerability. But kind of with that, I have one last question.
Okay.
And something that I really want to do with this podcast is allow each guest to introduce us to two, maybe three queer food professionals early in their career, or you think like they're amazing. Why aren't we talking about them or introducing them? And they could be chefs, restaurateurs, food writers, stylists, photographers, food businesses. But are there two, maybe three queer food professionals that you think we should know about?
Well, the first one, I mean, and again, like I don't know if you know these people or not, but the first one I wanted to bring up is Jeremy Salomon. So Jeremy is the chef at Aggie's Counter in New York and the
Hmm.
chef at Pitt's Brooklyn, which is closer to me, and both are fabulous restaurants. But my connection to him is hilarious because when I worked at the Food Network,
Hmm.
he was 13 and had a Food Network themed bar mitzvah.
That's
And
amazing.
I went to Florida and I interviewed him about that, and that was, like, 20
Stop.
years
Really?
ago
That's
or, like,
amazing.
18 years ago, yeah, so I've known him for a long time, and to see what he's done, I mean, to see that, like, when I found out he was gonna be a chef, I was like, "Oh, that cute kid from
Yeah.
Boca Raton is gonna come to New York and be a chef, like, good luck, like,
Yeah.
that's a tough path," and, like, to single himself out the way he's done and to
Hmm.
make a name for himself, and he's written a great cookbook.
That the cookbook is so good.
Yeah,
It's
I think it's
it's
called
like
Second Helpings. I have it right here. Maybe I
second
don't have it right
generation.
here. Second generation, sorry, second generation.
When I read the introduction, I was like, you literally made me cry. Like
Yeah,
cried. Like so good. Yeah,
it's a
Jeremy
great
is
book,
fantastic.
and so I would single him out, and then the other one I wanna mention is Renato Poliafito. Do you know Renato?
Yes.
Okay, well, I feel like you must know everybody, but
I don't know
Renato
everyone, but no,
actually
I barely know people.
somewhat accidentally, actually, I'm realizing both of them have a connection to Boca Raton, which is where my family lives, because
Yeah.
Renato's family lives in Boca,
Mhm.
too. And Renato was the co-owner of the bakery Baked in Red Hook, which I have all
Mhm.
their books, which are great books. And then he kind of broke off from there and opened a place in Brooklyn called Ciao Gloria.
Mhm.
And now he has a new cookbook out called Dolce, which is all those
Beautiful.
beautiful book, and it's all these Italian desserts, including my all-time favorite cookie, which is the rainbow cookie,
Yes.
which is red, white, or red,
Yeah.
yellow, and green, which he also serves at his new restaurant, Pasta Night, which I just went to. So I guess both of my people that I chose not only are from Boca Raton, Florida, but they also have restaurants in Brooklyn. So I guess I'm only really focusing on my little world here,
But that's
but
like
they're both
that's the point of this, and that they both have restaurants or bakeries, and I'm like, every time I'm in New York, I just have this huge list of places I wanna go to, and there's just never enough time, so but both of their books are beautiful and great examples of evolving the craft too,
Mhm.
like, showing
Yeah.
that it doesn't have to be this one thing or what we've been told it has to be, like, the storytelling, like, they're really
And
infusing
yeah.
storytelling, which is
And
beautiful.
also respecting history, because both of them are cooking,
Yes.
like, from their roots, it's like, I
Yeah.
think Jeremy's grandmother was Hungarian, I believe, and so there's, like,
Mhm.
goulash and things like, but it's, like, his spin on that, and then Renato obviously is, Italian and cooking Italian food, but
Yeah.
he's putting his own spin on it, which is so cool to see, like, a later generation take
And
these old
his
classic
story
dishes.
and Dolce is I found fascinating because it was this he took it upon himself to, like, discover more of his
Mhm.
Italian side and his ancestry, and it did it through food, and I was like, "Wow, this cookbook," like, the storytelling of cookbooks, that's where it is for me, but
Totally.
Adam, I really appreciate you taking the time
Oh my
to
gosh,
hang
thanks
out
for
with
having me
me. This
on.
was
Yeah.
fantastic, and
Well,
yeah, I
you
can't
boosted my
next time I'm
self-esteem. Now I feel so good. I'm gonna fire my therapist. This was
yeah,
great. So thank
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Sorry, therapist, but yeah, next time I'm in New York and Brooklyn, like, we
Yeah.
should hang out.
Let's do it. Let's go to Dolce.
That's episode 3 with Adam Roberts. I hope you enjoyed hearing his journey from the amateur gourmet to food person. Now go grab your coffee today, keep showing up, keep creating, and keep celebrating queerness in all its forms. Take care.